My parents never even used my real name. To them, I was simply the dumb one, a label they placed on me long before I could even read. Meanwhile, my brother Darren was treated like royalty. He was the genius, the pride of the Vale family, the one who earned a full scholarship to Harvard. Then something unexpected happened. A man I didn't recognize approached, handed me a thick white envelope, and whispered, "It's time to tell them who you really are." That moment would change everything I thought I knew about myself, and everything my family believed. On his graduation day, my father stood tall before hundreds of guests, proudly announcing the future Darren would inherit, our $75 million family company, a brand new Tesla, and the $13 million mansion in New York. The applause felt endless, like a coronation. I sat in the back, unseen and humiliated, wondering how I'd ever escape the shadow they'd cast over me. Growing up, love in our house was a reward, not a right, and only Darren ever earned it. My father, Victor Vale, made it clear who mattered. Darren was the prodigy, the golden son destined to carry the Vale name into the future. I was the other child, the one who never fit their mold of perfection. At family dinners, I always sat at the far end of the long mahogany table. My father at the head, Darren to his right, and my mother, Marielle, glowing with pride whenever Darren spoke. By the time I opened my mouth, the conversation had already moved on. I learned that silence hurt less than seeing their eyes roll. My father had a sharp tongue and could crush me with only a few words. I remember one evening when I was 14. Darren had just been accepted into an advanced science program. The table erupted in celebration. My father raised his glass and said, "That is what it means to be a Vale. Excellence, leadership, brilliance." Then, with a smirk, he turned to me. "And you, Aaron, past gym class. Let's celebrate small victories." Darren thrived in this world. Tall, confident, and sure of himself, he moved through life, knowing he was the favorite. When I was 16, I worked part-time at a diner to buy my own things. One night, as I left for work, Darren smirked from the couch, surrounded by our parents' praise. "Don't forget to wipe the grease off before touching the door. We wouldn't want the neighbors to think we have a servant." My parents laughed. I pretended it didn't bother me, but every remark like that left a mark. Laughter filled the room. Even my mother joined in, though her laugh was softer, almost apologetic, as if she knew it was cruel but couldn't resist. It wasn't the insult itself that hurt most, but the certainty behind it, that they truly believed I could never be more. My mother's comparisons came often, quiet but sharp. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" she'd ask while handing me a plate or laundry. Her voice calm, but her words heavy. Each one sank deeper, like stones dropped into water. The only person who saw me differently was my grandfather, Eldon Vale, the man who built our family empire from nothing. He was quiet, kind, and valued people over profit. When I visited him, he never asked about grades or achievements. He asked what made me happy. At home, life felt like a contest I could never win. My father trained Darren like a soldier for greatness, bringing him to meetings, letting him shadow business deals, calling him the future of the Vale legacy. I wasn't invited. I was told to mow the lawn or run errands, treated like an inconvenience rather than family. One afternoon, sitting on his porch, he said, "Aaron, never mistake their blindness for truth. You have something Darren doesn't. One day you'll see it. Don't let them convince you otherwise." His words stayed with me, though I didn't understand them then. Still, their judgment lingered. My father's voice haunted me. "You'll never amount to anything." My mother's sighs followed me down hallways. Darren's laughter echoed as a reminder of how effortless his life seemed. As we grew older, the gap widened. When Darren got into Harvard, my mother threw a lavish party the same night, catered dinner, champagne, the works. Guests congratulated me, assuming I was proud, but behind polite smiles, I felt invisible, like I existed only as Darren's shadow. By 19, I knew I couldn't count on my parents for love or validation. I worked multiple jobs, saving quietly, building small pieces of independence they never noticed. Darren spent his summers abroad. I spent mine lifting boxes in warehouses. My parents dismissed my work as meaningless, never realizing it gave me a strength they couldn't see. I wore one of Darren's old suits, barely tailored to fit, and sat in the back rows of the ceremony. From a distance, I watched him cross the stage to roaring applause while my parents stood to clap, beaming with pride. I clapped too, though my hands felt heavy. The day of Darren's graduation felt like a production. My mother commanded the staff about flowers, catering, and the guest list. My father rehearsed his speech in the foyer, polished and proud. My only role was to stay quiet. When his graduation approached, I braced myself for the usual humiliation, the favoritism made public, the praise I'd never receive. I expected to fade into the background, as always. But that night, fate had something else planned. Something that would prove my grandfather's words right and end my silence forever. After the ceremony came the grand celebration, a New York ballroom glowing under chandeliers. Guests arrived in luxury cars, dressed in gowns and tuxedos. Business leaders, politicians, and family friends filled the room. They weren't just celebrating Darren's graduation, they were there for the announcement of his inheritance. My father continued proudly. The Vail family has built not just a company, but a legacy. Tonight, I'm proud to announce that Darren will carry that legacy forward. The company valued at $75 million, the Tesla Model X outside, and our $13 million mansion, all will belong to him. I stayed near the back, half hidden behind tall vases of lilies. To most people, I was invisible, the other son. Then came the moment I dreaded. My father stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us to honor my brilliant son, Darren Vail. Applause erupted. Darren grinned, confident and composed. I wanted to disappear. The weight of years of rejection pressed down on me harder than ever. As my mother passed by, she whispered sharply, "At least don't ruin this for your brother." Then she smiled again and joined Darren at the front. The room cheered, glasses clinked, and laughter filled the air. I sat frozen, my heart sinking lower with each sound. My mother leaned into my father, smiling with satisfaction. Darren raised his champagne glass toward me, not to include me, but to mock me. I clenched my fists beneath the table, trying to stay composed, while rage and sorrow battled inside me. My grandfather's words echoed again. One day the truth will set you free. But what truth? All I knew was this reality. I was the forgotten son. The applause finally faded as music filled the room. And that's when I saw him, a tall man in a dark suit moving through the crowd. His gaze locked on me. He wasn't smiling or clapping. He approached, placed a white envelope on the table, and whispered, "It's time to tell them who you really are." Then he disappeared into the crowd. I stared at the envelope, my hands trembling. For years I had been mocked and silenced, but never had anyone hinted that there was more to me than what they said. I hid the envelope on my lap, heart pounding. The man's words echoed, "Who you really are." When I finally opened it, I found official documents and a folded handwritten letter. My eyes froze on the first page. My name appeared again and again, not as a mistake, but in legal recognition. The company shares, the New York mansion, and hidden accounts, all listed under Aaron Vail. Aaron, if you're reading this, it means the time has come. I've watched both you and Darren grow, and I knew long ago that the future of this family couldn't rest on arrogance or pride. I chose you because you understand humility, because you know what it's like to endure without being seen. You value people, not status. Everything I built belongs to you. Never doubt that. At the end was a signed transfer of authority from my grandfather, Eldon Vail. My hands trembled as I unfolded the handwritten letter. The familiar, steady handwriting made my breath catch. I stared at those words until they blurred. My grandfather had chosen me, not Darren, not my father, but me. The man they dismissed as useless was in truth the rightful heir. Yet as I thought of every moment that had led here, every insult, every cold stare, every time I'd been told I was nothing, I knew I couldn't stay quiet anymore. The envelope in my hand wasn't just paper. It was freedom. For years, I'd believed their cruelty defined me. But that letter proved my grandfather had seen something they refused to. A strength forged in silence. My chest tightened with disbelief and determination. I wanted to shout the truth right then, but fear held me still. My father's voice carried through the room, filled with pride and authority. If I interrupted him, it would mean war. This was that day. I tucked the documents inside my jacket, pressed them to my chest, and stood. My legs shook, but my resolve didn't. The music softened, and another toast began in Darren's honor. Glasses rose, cheers echoed, and I started walking toward the stage. At first, only a few people noticed. Then more heads turned. My father's smile faded into a frown. Darren's smirk grew, assuming I'd come to praise him publicly. My mother's warning glance was sharp, silently begging me not to make a scene, but my grandfather's voice echoed in my mind. One day, the truth will set you free. I climbed the steps to the stage, my heart racing, hands clenched. My father leaned toward the microphone, forcing a strained smile. But I didn't back down. My voice trembled at first, then steadied. "Aaron, this isn't your moment," he muttered. "Actually, father, this moment belongs to me." I pulled the envelope from my jacket, holding it close. "For years, you've made it clear who mattered in this family," I said. "But tonight, the truth speaks for itself." The room fell silent. Glasses froze midair. Darren's grin faltered. My father's jaw tightened, fury burning behind his eyes. For most of my life, I would have obeyed. But not this time. I raised the documents high enough for everyone to see. My father took a step forward, his voice low but sharp. "Aaron, step down before you embarrass yourself." "I'm not the one embarrassing myself," I said clearly. "You are." Gasps spread through the crowd. Darren gave a short, nervous laugh. "Sit down, Aaron, before you make a fool of yourself." "These," I said, "are signed transfer agreements from Eldon Vale himself. He chose me, not you, Darren. Not you, father. The company, the mansion, the accounts, they've been in my name for years." I unfolded the papers. The official seal of the Vale Company shimmered beneath the lights. Before he could grab the papers, a voice rose above the noise, firm, calm, unmistakable. The audience broke into stunned murmurs. Some craned their necks, others whispered in disbelief. My father lunged toward me, face flushed with rage. "This is nonsense." The old man was confused. He didn't know what he was doing. The crowd turned. My grandfather, Eldon Vale, stood near the front, his cane tapping softly as he made his way toward the stage. Though age had bent his body, his presence filled the room with authority. When he reached me, he placed a steady hand on my shoulder. I knew exactly what I was doing. "I entrusted these papers to someone I could rely on," he said, "to be delivered when the time was right, and that time is now. I chose Aaron because I watched both of my grandsons grow. Darren, you are brilliant, but brilliance without humility becomes arrogance. Victor, you built wealth, but you lost compassion. Aaron has endured neglect and cruelty, and yet has not hardened his heart. He will lead because he understands the value of every person, not just the powerful." The room erupted in whispers again. Darren's face turned pale, his voice breaking. "Grandfather, you can't mean this. I've done everything to make you proud. More than Aaron ever could." Eldon looked at him with quiet sadness. "You achieved for yourself, Darren, not for others. That is vanity, not leadership." My father's composure finally cracked. "You'd give everything to the one who failed? To the son who never lived up to the Vale name?" Silence followed, heavy, absolute. Even the chandeliers seemed to dim under the weight of his words. Eldon's reply was sharp and final. "I'm giving everything to the man who will redefine what the Vale name means." I turned to the audience, my voice firm. For the first time, I felt seen. Not as a disappointment, but as someone worthy. All my life, I was told I was nothing, that I'd never measure up. Tonight, You heard it again from my father. But you can also see the truth in my hands. My grandfather believed in me when no one else did. I won't waste that trust. I'll honor this family's legacy by building people, not just profits. At the back of the room, I noticed the stranger who had delivered the envelope. He met my eyes, gave a small nod, and disappeared once more. Whoever he was, he'd been the bridge between my grandfather's promise and this moment of truth. At first, only a few clapped, then others joined in, until applause filled the room. It grew louder, stronger, until it drowned out the silence that had defined my life. My father's face burned red with fury. My mother's smile vanished, replaced by shock. Darren stood frozen, the glass still in his hand, his confidence shattered. He squeezed my shoulder. Now show them why I was right. I turned to my grandfather, bowed my head, and whispered, "Thank you for believing in me." As the noise swelled around me, I realized this wasn't about money or inheritance. It was about freedom, breaking the chains of judgment and cruelty that had bound me since childhood. And under the golden light of the chandeliers, I understood the truth. When I looked back at the crowd, I no longer saw strangers watching a family's drama. I saw witnesses to change, to the end of one story and the beginning of another. For the first time, Darren lowered his eyes. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something unfamiliar: fear. I had never been the dumb one. I had simply been waiting for the right moment to show them who I truly was. The applause slowly faded into hushed whispers as the weight of what had just happened settled over the room. My father's fists clenched at his sides, his voice low and bitter. "This isn't over, Aaron. You have no idea what you've started." He turned sharply and stormed out, his shoes striking the polished floor like gunshots. My mother followed, her face pale, her perfect composure shattered. For years, she devoted herself to the image of a flawless family, and in a single night it had crumbled before everyone she sought to impress. Darren stayed where he was, rigid and trembling. His glass shook in his hand as he glared at me with disbelief and anger. "You don't deserve this," he hissed. "You're nothing compared to me." I met his eyes, calm for the first time in my life. "Maybe I'm not who you think I should be," I said evenly, "but I am who grandfather believes I can be. And that's enough." My grandfather stood taller than I'd seen in years. Though he leaned on his cane, his voice carried power. "This family changes tonight," he said firmly. "The company is now in the right hands, hands that understand the cost of being overlooked. Aaron, the responsibility is yours now. It's both a burden and a gift." Those words sank deep within me. I knew what they meant. Leading a multi-million-dollar company would not be easy, but for the first time, I felt ready. Not because I wanted revenge or validation, but because I wanted to honor the belief my grandfather had placed in me. The look in his eyes told me what he couldn't say. He was afraid. The foundation of his certainty had just collapsed. The guests began clapping again, softly at first, then louder, until the sound filled the hall. This time, the applause wasn't for Darren or Victor Vale. It was for me. The noise rose like a tide, washing away years of silence and shame. My chest lifted as I stood taller, finally stepping out of the shadow I'd lived in for so long. Later that night, when the guests had gone and the chandeliers dimmed, I stepped outside into the cool New York air. The city stretched before me, its lights shimmering across the skyline. For years, those lights had symbolized a world that belonged to everyone but me. Now, they looked different. They felt like a promise I'd finally earned. I thought about the boy I once was, sitting at the far end of the dinner table, ignored and dismissed. I thought about all the nights I believed their words, convinced I was worthless, and then I looked at the man I had become, standing beneath the city lights, free at last, holding the truth that had set me free. The lesson was clear. Being underestimated doesn't define your worth. Sometimes, the harshest judgments prepare you to rise stronger than anyone expects. The labels others give you don't decide your future. What matters is the truth you carry within, and the courage to stand when your moment arrives. My grandfather joined me outside, resting a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "I see it clearly." "You see it now, don't you?" he asked quietly. He smiled, his eyes reflecting the glow of the city. "Then carry it well, Aaron. The future is yours." Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below and tell me what part spoke to you most. And if you want to hear more stories like this one, make sure to subscribe. I took a deep breath, letting the cold air fill my lungs. The fear, the shame, the years of silence, they no longer held me. I wasn't the dumb one. I was the heir chosen not for perfection, but for resilience, compassion, and strength born from struggle. And to everyone listening, if you've ever been overlooked, mocked, or told you're not enough, remember this: your worth isn't defined by those who doubt you. Your time will come, and when it does, the truth will speak louder than every insult ever thrown your way.